Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just going to start. It's 6:29. I'd like to call this a special council meeting for Tuesday, October 29th to order. Joining us virtually is Councillor Jensen. Hello, Councillor Jensen. First of all, I'd just like to respectfully acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional territories of the Lekwungen-speaking people of the Ksepsen and Songhees nations, whose historical stewardship of these lands continue today. Item 2 is approval of the agenda. May I have a mover and seconder to adopt today's special council agenda, please? Thank you, Councillor Day and Councillor Olson. Discussion? Any opposed? Seeing none, unanimous. Motion carries. Pass. Moving on. Don't see anyone virtually for public participation and no one from the crowd. So I will move on from public participation into new business. Just before I turn it over to you, Jen, I just want to make sure staff feel very comfortable in this environment talking with us. I think it's very, very important. And there may be a lot of questions. Don't take things personally. I'm just going to tell you, we have a perspective. We're trying to keep taxes low, and each and every one of you has, your own initiatives that you wish to maybe proceed with. And maybe you get some pushback from us, but don't take it personally. We still love you. We love you all. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands this is the ground rules here. That, feel very comfortable here, and honesty and really good dialogue is important when we're doing these service reviews right now. And on that note, I'm going to turn it over to you, Jen.
Thank you, Mayor Kobayashi. So tonight we will be initiating the 2025 service review process. This is the city's 5th service review, and it's our 3rd comprehensive review. The open dialogue is incredibly important to this process. This is a process that this organization is incredibly proud of. Early September, Council endorsed the approach that we're taking for the 2025 to 2029 financial plan compilation. That approach relies heavily on this review that we're going to undertake inside of the next 2 weeks. Before we get started, I'll take a few minutes just to remind us of the timeline and the process. Simply put, there are no surprises. This is consistent with the process that we undertook last year. The city has 21 distinct service delivery areas. Last year, we presented on 19. The 2 new areas, youth engagement and health administration. So you'll hear from both of those areas for the first time with this service review. We have 5 special council meetings scheduled to cover the content. Right now, we have scheduled 4 of those meetings. So I want to remind the room and council that we do have time. So there will be a number of council recommendations, ultimately resolutions, that we are looking for you throughout this process. If at any time, any topic you believe that we require to provide further information, we will do so. And so as we advance through service review, whatever direction we receive, we will then integrate that and update that information when we return for budget deliberations, which are scheduled to start December 10th. Consistent with prior years, you'll hear from each of our service areas. I'll provide an overview of the area, and I will remind us of the existing expectations for this area. In a couple of instances, our team has proposed changes to the council expectations, and so we'll make sure that you're aware where there have been proposed changes. We will be looking for council to affirm the expectations for each service area. I'll then turn it over to the teams to talk about the successes, the challenges, the opportunities that they've experienced since the last service review inside of the last year. Finance will provide commentary with respect to the updated operating budgets for each area. We will also integrate commentary where we're seeing staffing changes and the financial implications of such. If an area has new special initiatives proposed, those have been published with these service profiles, and we'll also highlight any new initiatives for an area. And then ultimately, there is a recommended level of service that's being put forth by staff for each area, and we will be looking for council direction on that. Highlighted briefly with the 2025 budget approach, where we're currently trending with respect to the city's property tax increase for 2025. And I did want to remind us of that context before we start these conversations, because it is helpful to keep that in mind. Each operating budget ultimately does summarize the impact on the annual tax increase or decrease generated by the implications related for that area. The previously approved property tax increase for 2025 was 7.2%. So 6.2 plus 1% for our sustainable infrastructure. We brought forth a financial plan amendment earlier this year that included updated financial implications related to a new union for our fire services team. As a result of those implications, our tax increased to 8.45% for 2025. It's about 7.5 plus the 1% for sustainable infrastructure. We established a target on what we were attempting to achieve as we continued to compile and refine these budgets. This process of updating our operating budgets and updating our service activity, it starts early on in the year. It's incredibly focused inside of the last 2 months. So our target increase is 6.4%. So 5.4 plus the 1% for sustainable infrastructure. Today, we are trending at an average of about 6.8% for each of the next 2 years. Can we get to our target of 6.4? We'll see as we continue through this review and into budget deliberations. But today, I wanted to highlight for 2025, we're currently sitting at around 6%. For 2026, we're sitting just under 8%. We will be discussing the primary drivers in each service area. And then when we continue with capital budget deliberations in December, we will highlight the implications of our capital plan, in particular the debt financing that the city has committed to for some major initiatives. So wanted to start with that context, often reference to a 1% increase. So our prior taxation was about $22 million for the city. So when we talk about 1%, that's generating an additional $220,000 to support service delivery.
Just a quick clarification. So if we were not to touch anything over the next 4 days that we're doing these service reviews, I just want to make sure I am clear. Where are we sitting for tax increase?
So today for 2025, we're sitting at about 6%.
Okay,
so about 5% overall, plus the 1% for sustainable infrastructure.
Okay, so that confuses me because you got 6.42 here. And
that was our target. So we published this when we brought forth the budget approach.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah, so that's our target.
Can I also make another recommendation? Because it's not quite true. It confused me at first when I went through the whole document, right? Was the, when you say 2025 tax increase approved, well, it's not, technically it's not approved. It's the 5-year plan number, right? That's what that is. It's the 5-year. It's not approved because that's what we're doing now. We're about to look at service review and then approve a budget. Then it's approved. So it's just terminology. It confused me.
We approve a 5-year plan. If this city does nothing, we already have a budget for 2025.
Okay.
That budget includes a budgeted taxation amount to support what has been approved for 2025. So as we continue through service review, we highlight where's our updated budget in comparison to the previously approved budget for 2025.
You see my confusion. When
Completely.
You say approved, I go, no, we haven't approved diddly squat here. So that's just my point. I'm so used to seeing a 5-year, and that's the 5-year budget, because
Yes,
you can't really approve.
it's,
Theoretically, you put a 5-year plan out, you approve it, right? And theoretically, you're right, you could spend to it, but it's not approved, otherwise we wouldn't be doing what we're doing right now.
I encourage this room. It's important that we consider the multi-year budgets
Mhm.
because we are making decisions that affect year one, that affect year two, that affect year three. So it's
Yeah,
important to keep that in mind.
I didn't want to get caught up in
Yeah.
semantics. It just threw me off at first when I was looking at the budgets. I was going, approved, what do you mean approved? So,
The 2025 budget as approved under the 2024 to 2028 financial plan.
5-year plan, right, thank you. Okay,
You're welcome.
Counselor Day?
Thank you. I hear you saying 6, but what we're looking at in front of us is 7.21. On the screen in front of us, it says 7.21 for the 2025 tax increase under the 5-year plan. And then it says we're trending towards 8.45
Yes,
and that our target was 6.4.
yes.
So I find it very confusing that you're saying we're talking about a 6%. 6% is not what we're looking at.
The 2025 tax increase that was approved at 7.21% was under the 2024 to 2028 financial plan. The 2025 tax increase that was trending was based on the amendments that we made to the 24 through 28 financial plan earlier this year. Specifically, the change between the 7.2 and the 8.45 was entirely related to the updated cost estimates for the fire service delivery under the new contract. The target was based off of preliminary updated budget estimates. As we every year, as Mayor Kobayashi has commented on, we update our budgets. So while we approve a 5-year plan and we have our budget ready to go. So regardless of what happens, when that calendar flips over to January 1st, we do have an operating budget in place. We do have a capital budget in place. But we are annually refining those budgets. So when we brought forth our budget approach, which was published late August of this year, based on those updated budgets, we believed that a target of 6.4% overall was reasonable. Since late August, between late August and the middle of October, as we've finalized these drafts that have now been published, that 6.4 is sitting at approximately 6% for 2025. So we have dropped it. And it's at approximately 7.8% for 2026. And I know that's a lot of numbers, but I want us to keep in mind there are decisions that we've previously made that have taxation implications on multiple years, either as we phase in increased personnel resourcing or we phase in debt servicing resourcing. But today, the draft budgets that are before you that have been published for this service review, ultimately, we're sitting at about 6% tax increase. And we'll also be commenting on year two for some of these areas. And year two is sitting at just shy of 8%.
And perhaps you may want to tell council how you're thinking about the major crime unit and how you're gonna.
Absolutely. As we get into each area, we'll be highlighting the financial implications, and we'll be highlighting how that is affecting the overall increase for the entire city's entire budget.
I just wanted to say I'm going to be doing my best to look for reasonable places to try to curb our increases, just because I know there are a lot of things we haven't fleshed out yet, and we just will need to come to terms with our tax increases based on what the community is going to need in the next 5 to 10 years.
Absolutely.
Super, thanks. Can you continue on, please?
And so with that, we'll get started with the first service area, communications and engagement. The role of the communications team includes strategic communications, planning and advice, community engagement, external and internal communications, media relations, branding, marketing, event planning, arts and culture initiatives, placemaking, volunteer coordination, and more. The team works directly with council, leadership, and staff, as well as media and a wide range of partners to research, analyze, add context, provide advice, develop strategic communications and engagement plans, create messaging, and adjust for continuous improvement. Perhaps turn it over to Sandra to just briefly introduce the team, and then we'll get into the expectations of this area.
Thanks, Jen. I'm Sandra Russell, Communications Manager. This is Angie Diedrich, our new volunteer coordinator, and Ann Downton, Youth Engagement Coordinator.
Council's expectations for this area are summarized in the following 5 points. First, strategic communications planning and advice that mitigates risks and results in timely, effective messaging that advances the city's strategic priorities and builds Colwood's brand as an exceptional seaside community. Meaningful engagement with citizens and other stakeholders that builds trust and contributes to improved decision-making and understanding by residents. High-quality marketing, promotions, and branding through campaigns, events, signage, and other placemaking initiatives that reflect the city's vision, raise Colwood's profile, and advance the city's goals. Engaging community events and celebrations that strengthen community connections and raise Colwood's profile as an exceptional seaside community. And a website that is an informative, efficient, and effective tool for city communications. And so with that, I'll take pause. We are looking for any feedback from council on your expectations of this service area.
I do have a related question. It's, it's part of the organization's capacity, the roles here, which are connected to the expectations. I just have a quick question for you, Sandra. It is the efficacy of, right now we have, Let's Talk Colwood. We have Colwood Connect, is it Colwood Connect? I think it is.
Connection.
And then we have our website. Is it like you have to maintain all three? And is it better just to have it all in one, like have it captured under our website? I just have that question because it's so confusing. Like this is why you don't get as many people joining, different Colwood Connect or Let's Talk Colwood. They do tend to go to our website. And I think your data actually shows that they actually do go to our website a lot more. And they have to be, they might see something, Let's Talk Colwood, and they don't know what that is. So I just wanted your comments on that, like, your honest opinion on that. Would it be better to put it all under one, and just from an efficiency point of view? Your opinion, please. Thank you.
Thanks for that question. I think they serve different purposes. So Let's Talk Colwood, for example, is a two-way communication tool where we're able to inform the community and they can then provide feedback right on that platform. Our website is more of a push communication tool. And as you say, it's what most people would search first because people think of websites first. The Colwood Connection newsletter, alternatively, is something that lands right in people's mailboxes. So that's the one that is hitting people who maybe aren't coming to us at all, aren't maybe even interested in what's going on in their city, but there it is, it lands in their mailbox, and it's another opportunity for people to learn, particularly for those who aren't online or computer savvy, or that's not the way they consume information. There's a range of other tools we use as well, and that's, the social media platforms,
Of course.
ads in the local newspaper. And so when we do our citizen surveys and we ask people how do they like to get information about the city, we see that each of those tools is used by a subset of the community. I think we see less, people moving away from the newspaper, for example, and more to the online tools. But maybe it would be a timely thing to bring back those stats from the citizen survey so council can review them, and we can talk about that in more detail about if there's different directions we want to go or where we want to put our focus more so.
Okay, thank you. No, it's just interesting because like I said, I sometimes don't look at some of those to tell you the truth. I go to our website now, basically it's my primary source. So it's just that the other question I had actually asked of me, which was really a really good question. And it's based on a study done at Railroad University about the the effectiveness of newspaper, like the print, and how many people do and don't use it. And I was a case study when I had a business here, and they studied my business where we were in a weekends edition in the Victoria Times Colonist, and they put it out there, and they actually put in one of my businesses in my sandwich shop, they actually had all the newspapers there, and then they asked everybody as they walked out how many people saw our one-page ad in the Victoria Times Colonist, and it was like 3%. It was pretty bad. And for the money that you spend on it, and we do spend a lot of money, I understand every time we go put things into print. So do you have that data now? And because I'd love to see you spend the money in other places that you want to, right? I don't want you feel that you're compelled by us, that you should be using newspaper when it's not effective. Your
Yeah.
comment on that, please.
Yeah, so that's another sort of disadvantage to newspaper is it's harder to get metrics. You don't know how many people have seen it. We can talk about the dollars we spend on advertising. We can talk about the way that the city has worked to amalgamate ads into a single consistent, every second newspaper. We see the Colwood Corner now, and we try to put most of our information into that, which is represents some cost savings that I could pull together the data on to see how much we potentially have saved doing that. But you're right that there is no data from other than what the distribution is, the distribution rates provided by the publications. And so it's hard to compare. We do hear from some people that that's where they like to see, information. And there are some legislative requirements for advertising in the local newspaper based on our own
Sorry,
bylaws.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Counselor Day?
Thank you. I noticed in reading the report that Let's Talk Colwood registration, only 50% are Colwood residents who are registered there. And that that sort of is a bit of a niggle for me in that I realize that in the past we've looked to kind of market Colwood, but at the same time, I think what I'm looking for from communications and engagement for the city of Colwood is to engage our residents so that we're all on the same page. So that's kind of problematic for me. And I've also received comments from the public that there's a high barrier for them to participate on the Let's Talk Colwood platform because it seeks demographic and monetary data from registrants. And the concern that I have is we've often utilized statistics based on input from the Let's Talk Colwood platform, but are our non-resident participants potentially altering the data that we're taking from there?
Thank you for that question. I'm happy to be able to speak to that. I think that the one engagement that really boosted the numbers of non-Colwood residents was when we had the Ocean Boulevard conversation, and it really went regional. And I would argue, and I can pull data that shows where actually data by neighborhood, by Colwood neighborhood and outside of Colwood. And so I could pull by project also which registrants have responded. And I think by and large, we would see that for the most of our Colwood-centric engagements, it would be our Colwood neighbors. It really was the Ocean Boulevard conversation that pushed the number of outside Colwood registrations. So I could bring some more data forward from that. In terms of barriers, I can't think of a specific engagement where we ask about income metrics, although there may have been some added. The registration questions, I believe, are related to age, and it uses groupings, and neighborhood. We require registration. It's optional. We could turn registration off for specific projects if we wanted to do that. But what it does is reduce people gaming it. And we can understand where they are coming from the way it's reported here. So I hope that answers some of your questions.
Sure. And the other concern I had was that I also had a call on the materials that were at the engagements. They couldn't find them on our website.
Mm.
Now, I don't know if that's 100% because they're not there or it's because they just couldn't find them, but I did not find them either when I went to look, but I may have run out of time and hunting as well.
Yeah. I would need to know which project we're talking about, but generally what we do is have a link on the website that takes you to the greater detail on the Let's Talk site. It's something we could explore whether it makes more sense to reverse that or duplicate it in both places. But yeah, generally the website is a source of truth about all the initiatives the city has going, and Let's Talk dives a little bit deeper and asks people for input. It's currently how it's set.
And I'm going to try to ask the same question of every service area, but given that we can see that there's a lot of things that we're going to have to afford in the near future that where the price tag has been going up, and there's nothing we can actually do about it. Is there any area within your understanding that we might be able to make some changes to provide more cost benefit for our service? And I'm not looking to cut your hours or something. I'm just trying to look at how could we do this and get a little bit of cost savings.
Mhm. Thanks for that. I think we've worked really hard to bring forward a budget that has considered that. But in terms of the three service areas that we're talking about here tonight, I think that probably the events area, we hosted a lot of events this year, and we could likely look at that area to find efficiencies to do more with a fewer number of events. That's the area I would point to, but I welcome council's direction on that.
Great, thank you.
Well, you're off. Okay, please continue. So the expectations don't change them, what I can see right here, so. Oops.
Thank you. So with that, I will turn it over to Sandra and her team to provide highlights for you with respect to the successes and challenges and opportunities in this area.
Thanks, Jen. So I'll just run quickly through some of the communications and engagement successes from this past year. So youth engagement. We've supported the health, safety, and success of youth in Colwood through the youth engagement coordinator position, and Anne will speak more to that in the next service profile. The 2024 Ideas Fair, another successful event, I think, to gather people's input on a broad range of topics that we understand matter most. Completed the Household Prosperity Survey to gather citizen data that will inform and has been, I think, informing decision-making and new initiatives. We completed the website redesign so that we have a strengthened search function, a more community-focused, user-focused navigation, more direct links to council meeting information, and that's going to be further improved. By January, the search tool will also search the meeting information so that if you search urban forest, it will not only search what we have on our website, but it will also comb through meeting information, reports and things. So that's an improvement I'm looking forward to. It also has the highest accessibility and legibility standards. So, and it's also brought us up to date on the latest licensing of the platform, which will allow us to incorporate Tempest tools and more user tools. We, of course, hired a volunteer coordinator at Council's direction to enhance health, well-being, belonging, and quality of life for residents. Supported the implementation of the COVID Clinic initiative in its early stages, as you know. I'll jump to a few. The retail strategy, which the city hopes to receive a draft this week, actually, and we will be working with the West Shore Chamber to have a new prosperity roundtable to discuss that with local business owners and others. Continue to implement the Colwood wayfinding strategy with signage. A new round is coming on that. And maybe now I'll turn it over to Angie just to talk a little bit about some of the volunteer successes she's had in her short time with us.
Sure.
Sorry, Angie.
I have a cold. This isn't my usual voice, although it kind of sounds sexy on here. Sorry. My apologies. I'm delighted to be here and it's a pleasure to work for the city of Colwood. So thank you for this opportunity. So we've been busy since we started, really just trying to get involved and get to know the community of Colwood and its residents. We started off right away with a volunteer night at Music in the Park, where we were able to meet and engage with residents and encourage them to do an online survey through Let's Talk, where we actually heard from 93 people about how they're involved in the community. So that was a great start. And then just this last September 28th, last month, we had our first conversation cafe with Colwood groups. I've actually met with 22 different groups now, 16 from Colwood and 6 from West Shore, just to get a feel for what everybody's doing and how they're involved and how I can be supporting their work. So we also developed and launched an internal city volunteer program. So we have now a process that we can bring volunteers to help us with our internal work, like eats and beats and those kinds of events. And then I've been working to try to help our Colwood groups, volunteer groups, find volunteers. So one of the events I've attended was with the Royal Roads University to connect students to what our Colwood groups are offering. And then, of course, we are supporting some very specific groups as was directed by council. And we're currently have been supporting Wildwise, the Colwood Garden Society, Latoria Creek Park Stewardship as they begin to develop, some of our climate champions, and then we'll be moving on to litter pick teams in the winter. And of course, we just launched, we're pretty excited to just launched our Mayor's Good Neighbor Recognition Program this month. So we're really well underway with our volunteer program. And just to let you know, we will be activating the volunteer week. This is 2025, April 27th to May 3rd. So you can look forward to that. Thanks.
Thanks, Angie.
Just a quick question for you. And welcome. So, do you have a like a database now for volunteers in Colwood, and what does that look like now? How many people do we have in that database?
Well, what I've started to do is we do have a database of the groups in Colwood who are supporting volunteers. So I think what my role is right now is supporting volunteerism in Colwood. So we're helping people to be engaged and find ways to be involved in Colwood. So I do have a volunteer database of groups who are actively looking for volunteers in Colwood. And then we have our own, also we have a little database of our internal volunteers.
Okay. And what do we use the volunteers for right now? That's what I'm
Internally,
yeah.
we're just internally asking them to help us with events like Music in the Park, Eats and Beats. There may be a few other initiatives that come.
Okay, thank you very much. That's great.
Thank you, Angie. So I'll just jump to, well, challenges and opportunities. We continue to build resident trust and confidence in the city through our efforts to have clear, timely, and transparent communications. Support the organization's ability to navigate civil discourse, mostly on social media, but also just in the world. And then just some priorities for 2025 to develop strategies for increased local neighborhood engagement, to understand and support local needs. So we're going to be looking at ways to go right into neighborhoods and hear what is most important to them, sort of an open dialogue. to start that conversation. Use the retail strategy to develop a commercial value proposition for the city, which may inform a marketing strategy. Further the climate action plan communication strategy. And then, as Angie mentioned, work with community groups to help them form and engage people in Colwood, and also to have some community campaigns, particular to living with wildlife, dogs on leash, especially as we start to make changes at Colwood Creek Park, and then etiquette and litter, and then of course youth. And we'll continue to support physician recruitment and the implementation of the Colwood Clinic. I'll leave it there unless you have questions.
It's great. Thank you very much. I do have a question on the chart that you're not showing right now.
Mhm.
And can you just, like on the one with the staffing, and you have the subscript, or whatever you call superscript, the notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you have 5.
Mm.
And there's no 5 there. So I wasn't too sure what you're trying to tell me with that 5. You see that on full-time equivalent? You have 5 and you go below. I do read what you send me.
I see that.
So is it supposed to be 4?
It's interesting. Maybe we dropped off the 5 note.
Okay. Just fine.
It looks like the note explaining 5
Got cut off.
Okay.
got cut off.
Okay, that's okay. So
But I
But
think
we
what it-
can explain
I
it.
think what it talks about-
at least you know that I'm reading it. Okay, thanks. Please continue.
I think what it talks about is just how we've split it between these 3 service areas that
Okay.
we're presenting tonight, because it's a little bit confusing how each of the 4 positions we have in communications falls within these 3 service areas, right?
Challenges and opportunities.
I think I kind of skimmed through those. So I'll leave it there unless Jen wants to adjust the budget piece.
Oh, right.
With that, I'll jump over to the budget, and not to lose sight of your comment there, Mayor Kobayashi. The intention with each service area is that this staffing position, both the history and the forecast in particular, it aligns with the financial implications that are before you in the operating budget. As Sandra's just mentioned, this year, with the establishment of 3 distinct service areas served by this team, we updated operating budgets to show an internal allocation of the existing resources between the 3 service areas. So that 5th footnote there was to highlight that we haven't reduced the staff overall, but that they have been internally allocated to the other 2 related
Okay.
areas.
Fair.
And so with this being the first operating budget, I'll just take a moment to walk us through sort of reading from left to right and then up to down. When we reference in these budgets the 2024 approved budget amount and the 2025 approved budget amount, those are references to the budgets under our current financial plan, under our 2024 to 28 financial plan. What we have highlighted in blue for every operating budget, that's the updated draft budget that is being proposed to support this service delivery for the 2025 year. We then show the change, both the percentage and the dollar change of what was previously approved for 25 versus what has been updated and is being proposed as the draft 2025 budget. We also disclose the 2026 and 2027 budgets. Then moving down, we'll summarize the core expenses. So those are the operating expenses, budgets to support existing service delivery. Then where there are financial implications to support a proposed increased service delivery, we've highlighted those separately. So in this specific instance, I'll be commenting on the volunteer engagement proposal for 2025 and beyond, the youth engagement proposal for 2026 and beyond, as well as incremental funding to support an enhanced retail marketing strategy. So we do separate out financial implications of existing service delivery from those financial implications of the proposed increased service delivery. The bottom box highlighted in blue is the overall increase or decrease in property tax dollars from last year to support the service delivery in this area. So with communications and engagement, we're seeing an internal allocation of the costing of staff time from this service area to events, arts, and culture. As we know, our team has been supporting that work for a number of years now, but we haven't been costing their time there. And with these updated budgets, the intention is to cost the time so that we can more accurately reflect the costs of the city's events, arts, and culture related activities. Volunteer engagement, as you'll recall, trial initiative under the 2024 service review. This update is proposing that we continue a part-time volunteer engagement position beyond the trial period. And so the financial implications of continuing that have been highlighted in 2025, and then a further incremental amount in 2026. We do have some funding remaining. We will have some funding remaining at the end of 2024 to continue that trial into next year. This budget proposes the remaining funding to keep that part-time position on beyond the trial period. In addition, we've highlighted within the package before you the federal grant funding that is funding our 3-year youth engagement initiative. This budget proposes a continuation of that service. Right now we have federal grant funding into 2026. This budget proposes a continuation of that service, specifically both between the City of Colwood and West Shore Parks and Recreation Society. So West Shore Parks and Recreation has indicated, excuse me, that they would be providing programming funding as well. So it's important to keep in mind kind of the two budgets will be required to support that existing youth engagement service. Lastly, we previously highlighted an incremental marketing budget. And specifically, it's our expectation that this additional $10,000 would support the recommendations from the city's retail strategy, which I believe is coming forth this quarter for council consideration.
Could you just remind all of us, because it's been a while that we talked about that? Could you just remind me what that was again?
The retail strategy?
Yeah.
Yep. So it's a commercial retail strategy that speaks about the viability of commercial in Colwood. And so it looks specifically at commercial nodes such as the Beachlands and Royal Bay, Hatley Park area, Colwood Corners area, and talks about square area footage that can be feasible, how many, what type of provider. It's going to give us some really good data about what type of businesses Colwood should be looking to attract and is likely to be able to attract.
Thank you. That's
You're
great.
welcome.
So I know we had this discussion last year, and I'm confused again. So when we talk about maintain, like I noticed right through all of these things, maintain, increase, decrease. So if I see a number that's positive, I know finance people look at things differently than I do, but I look at this is negative. So to me, it looks like it's a decrease, right? So I didn't, when I looked at this, an increase, and I just, so you're playing games with me.
It doesn't help that we lost our 5th footnote. So what is misleading with this operating budget is because we've done an internal reallocation. So when you look at the communications and engagement core operating budget,
Yes.
previously approved at $293,000, the updated draft is just over $200,000. That's because of an internal allocation. So you're going to see that swing when we get into, I think, 2 service profiles from now into events, arts, and culture. You're going to see that increased costing over there. But you're correct. In general, when we are proposing an increased level of service, it's reasonable to expect that you will see increased funding required to support that increased level. You will see in some service areas where we are not proposing an increased level of service, but that there are increased costs associated to ensure that we can maintain existing service delivery. And to further complicate matters, it's not always black and white. And so in some instances, you'll have increased costs, and in part, they are supporting what we are considering an increased level of service, and in part, they are supporting maintaining existing service delivery. So we will do our best to highlight that with each
So that footnote
service
was
area.
important.
It will be back.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Jordison.
Thank you. I just want to clarify. So I looked at each one of them are separate with their budgets, right? So arts and culture separate from this one.
Correct. We currently have two distinct operating budgets. Youth engagement is within the communications and engagement.
Thank you. I just wanted to be sure. Thanks.
So I think we're gonna have to give you a new title, Sandra. You know, maybe it's communications and administration. You got all kinds of, we're sort of throwing everything in your way, I noticed here.
And so with that, that concludes our presentation of this service area. And we are looking for council resolve with respect to the level of service. So the proposed level of service is an increase, and that's directly tied to the two distinct aspects with respect to volunteer engagement continuation and the youth engagement continuation.
So, questions at this point in time? I guess I do then. I'm maybe getting ahead of myself a little bit here because because they're sort of interconnected here. But I guess some of my concerns are, and I really see the youth coordinate, the importance of looking after our youth activities here in Colwood. And what I guess I'm getting a little concerned about, because I've been talking with the Village Initiative, whatever her position is, coordinator or whatever, and I've just talked to all the people on the youth side right now, and right now there's no plan, there's no master plan on how everything joins together, and I'm confused as heck right now. And I don't know if we seem to be doing something here in Colwood, which is great. I mean, it's a great initiative what we're doing. I can tell you flatly. My concern is that, this money has been from grant money that we've been putting into this. And the benefit is just not Colwood. And I'm not thinking Colwood centric. I mean, we're all neighbors here, and it's good because the people that participate right now in the youth evenings on Friday night are from all over. They're Colwood, Langford, View Royal, people from outside. They're all participating, and it's good because you know where your kid is for a couple hours on Friday night. And I think it's good. It's a great initiative. But, to me, when it's coming to an end, I think what we should be doing, myself personally, we as the West Shore, the mayors, we should all get together and say, hey, let's pay for this, for the coordinator instead of just being on our dollar. Because right now I don't care because it's coming from the federal government and it's for the benefit of West Shore, and I love it. And it's not that I'm, like I said, that I'm Colwood centric with this. Well, we're not going to let people from Langford or whoever, but I think they would all see the value in this. So to me, I think it's important. I know you've got only partially from the city of Colwood and West Shore Parks and Rec in the future. I see that. I'm cool with this, but I think we could do better with this. And I guess, and I've been making this complaint. You probably see Cindy Andrews in my office a lot, and Paul, they're in my office because I've been trying to take a bit of leadership on this and say, hey, come on, guys, let's come up with an overall plan and strategy and how we're going to do this. Because I'm confused. It seems like everyone's doing this and that, and we're all uncoordinated. Maybe you're going to tell me I'm wrong, but this is how I see this and through my eyes. And if we want to do this and be really effective and have those metrics, in place that, we're seeing success, though. we're getting X number of kids off the street, or whatever metric that we should be using. It just seems like it's all over the place. And I went down to a few of the counselors and myself went down to this village initiative exhibition last week. And, you know, I was very blunt about it. Says, I think it can work better. Oh, but we're just in a village initiative or a bunch, but there's no one running the show here. So I guess that's my only misgiving on that side. I think that there's value in it, so don't get me wrong at all. But I think it's uncoordinated. And yeah, we can earmark something like this for now. Yeah, because we don't want to lose touch that this is an important initiative by our city. We think that this is valuable. But I think we're going to have to rethink on how we do this and how we pay for this in the future. I'm just making that comment. And if you want to make a comment back and tell me
Sure.
I'm all wrong, Sandra.
No, maybe I'll just make a quick comment. Anne is, has some materials prepared to share some metrics and some of the successes of the program. I think, Kawa Council has been a leader in this space, and that's commendable. I think the fact that West Shore Parks and Recreation is allocating, what I'm hearing is $100,000 toward programming for continuation of this type of service, and knowing that West Shore Parks and Recreation is funded by the 5 municipalities, I think it sets a nice precedent for a conversation about whether we join as 5 municipalities in funding this sort of work. So I'm right there with you, and I'd love for Anne to be able to tell you a little bit more about the work she's doing, but I see that.
Councilor Jordison, thank you.
Thanks. That is something I picked up as well, and I just wanted to say that I agree with the mayor on this. And it's similar to our transportation within our own communities. We can move people around our communities, and then we get stuck at different other municipalities, and we're not all working together. So I'm happy to go along with this because it's really important. But I just hope that we could try and find the funds jointly with our neighbors. Yeah, because it's really a beneficial program. So thank you.
So we weren't making motions on this, were we, before? We just get a consensus here that we agree or disagree?
I was just going to suggest, perhaps prior to considering the recommended increased service for communications and engagement, we have our presentation of the youth engagement related area, and then we'll jump back to that.
Okay, thank you.
So youth engagement, this is exciting new service being led by our communications and engagement team to support the health, safety, and well-being of youth in Colwood, including work with youth to understand their needs, engage youth in decision-making with their community, create safe spaces for youth, support service provision by local youth service providers, identify and coordinate space for beneficial youth services, raise awareness about gang and gun violence, how to recognize it and employ strategies to protect youth from becoming engaged in it, promote and improve access to services that benefit youth, and positive promotion of youth. We have proposed 5 expectations for council's consideration. These are brand new expectations. Support the health, safety, and success of youth in Colwood. Increase the city's capacity to engage youth. Seek to understand and respond to the expressed needs of youth in Colwood. Emphasis on preventative programming rather than crisis management. And lastly, work in partnership with other West Shore youth agencies. And so with that overview of the expectations, we welcome your feedback or your affirmation of what we have proposed for this service. Thank you.
Council, any additions, deletions, or an affirmation? Oh, Councilor Day.
Thank you. This is it's a tough thing for municipalities, this youth area. And that's obvious by both our desire to jump in with both feet and our reticence once it gets going. Oh my God, what have we created? But I think it's really important because maybe the easier way to look at it is what happens if we don't have this. And I've seen some of what happens when you don't have this. And it's been youth violence at bus stops here. It's been youth on youth violence. It's been long-term trauma. And while I can't directly point to how providing these services would, uh, you know, obviously and properly linked with data show investment within our community, I know intuitively that not having this is going to give us more things that need to be fixed, more graffiti that we have to take down, more infrastructure that we have to build, more problems within their community. So the more somehow that we invest in this, and the more successful it is, I think the more likely that other communities will want to join and partner with us on it. So I think we have to have some faith. Yes, the kids that we serve, they might not at this particular moment live in Colwood, but they probably go to school with the kids who live in Colwood. And the ones that we're helping may also be the ones who don't bully the kids who live in Colwood. There's a lot of spin-offs from it. So I know it's always difficult at budget to talk about wonderful programs that aren't exactly easy to link with data to outcomes. But none of the programs that exist for youth were actually ever created with any data points anyways, including everything that the province does. So I think it's important to remember that if you know in your heart that we're doing the right thing and it's beneficial to our community because community is kinder, gentler, nicer in every interaction, then it's going to be beneficial. So I support continuing our youth engagement and trying to be that unique municipality that is willing to take the risk.
Thank you very much, Councillor Grove and then Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a youth engagement section here. There's a lot of material in here, so thank you very much for that because it's so new and so fresh and young. And then there's all this went on. It's like, wow, been busy. I think I was there one night to hand out pizza. Spent most of the time thinking, gee, I could like a piece of that myself right now. I thought that the whole image there that came to my mind was this fact that there was a spot for that night. I can't remember the number. Was it 120? Does that sound like reasonable? Yeah, and I'd heard about much bigger numbers, and it was a place for that all those kids to show up and be in a safe place. And I was really overcome by how wonderful this is all happening. Then that presumably carried on and became more popular. And by your statistics here, it's been very I would call that successful, and I have no idea what to base that on. You know, the numbers seem to be pretty good. And then the survey results that are showing up with response is remarkable. I think the level of response seems to be good. So my thinking then in terms of the expectations here, what do we say? Here I am busy scrolling away from what I wanted to look at. And then the idea of working with partnership with other West Shore youth agencies. And I've just been assigned to the Foundry startup, and that, oh, holy smokes, because the Village Initiative represents 60 different groups. And here's this network coming together, and everybody's saying the same thing. We all have to find ways to work together. And I don't think that we're doing anything. I don't even know how to look at it. So that's where I would like to see more how we're focusing what it is. Like I remember in my youth, there were drop-in centers, there were coffee shops, they called them, but you know, they had wine bottles with a candle in it, they're all dripping down and a folk singer playing. And I think I heard Gordon Lightfoot in his young days before anybody knew who he was at one of those particular places. And that's kind of the way we hung out. We had a place to go. But also that my kids growing up, and a lot of kids were, and my staff at the bakery even, were hanging out at the malls. So I think that the West Shore Parks program, where we got going activities, it's safer and focused. So I think that over time, I see how it would only develop and evolve as programming becomes more sophisticated and more. And am I on the right track when I talk that way? Sorry, I don't know if, and maybe, yeah, because I know you haven't had a chance yet to go through some of your stuff, but
Correct. Thank you through the chair. Just, I'm inspired by the comments and the direction that you think you'd like to take this in. I've been at a conference with the City of Victoria, Community Safety and Wellbeing Conference, and connecting with some of my colleagues who, municipalities and cities who also were recipients of the Building Safer Communities Fund, who hired, people like myself to develop programming for youth. And you're right, the data does not exist. And you're right, we don't have a regional strategy, and those exist, and we're sort of on the precipice of building strategies, safety and wellness strategies that take into account children and youth, who are, some people say, the canary in the coal mine for how our communities are doing. So I see the potential to do something for the West Shore, to do a collaborative strategy, and talk about priorities and metrics that make sense for the region in the future, if that's something you want to look at. And also, I tried to put a little buffet together of some data that I thought would
Yeah.
be meaningful, and we're starting from nowhere, and some of this is going to stick and some of it isn't, and what might be successful for you, it might be might not be for someone else. So I was trying to just give you a taste of everything we've done in the last year.
yeah, and I would just like to add, I think that it's very exciting, and I have every confidence, and I'm more than happy to support what's going here and moving in that direction, because presumably over the next year, there's going to be huge strides made in terms of these issues that we are trying to resolve simply because of the newness of it. And so for that, I'm thrilled that Colwood is in showing this leadership, and I'm happy to spend our money on a West Shore initiative, if you will, to get this thing going. It seems very much to me like a beginnings of a startup that's going to be very successful. And I think the West Shore Parks and Rec Center location is brilliant as well. It's central, and in a lot of ways includes the, like, even View Royal, and people come in from Achosin, and there's the Exchange Transit and so on, and it's a well-worn place. So anyway, thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, David. Councillor Wilson.
Gosh, is it my turn? Not to discredit what anyone else is doing, but I think that, Anne, you have probably one of the most rewarding jobs. So I just want to thank you for that. And I'm really excited that we have this new service area, because I think it is extremely important. And I'll be brief, but I just noting, when you look at the performance metrics, like in comparison to 2023, what we weren't doing, right? You've got, the number of youth engagement events, or sorry, the connections with youth, the total connections, 1,476. And then now we're at over 8,000. So I think just the fact that you're seeing such a huge increase in just making those connections, and that's like the first step, and that's the most important thing. So I think this is very successful. And just one question was, are we keeping statistics on where these kids are coming from that we're connecting with? Are we able to kind of just see where in the West Shore or other communities they're coming from?
It's program dependent. So that 8,000 number of youth connections is all of the programs in there, it's in entirety. So we don't track when youth come to a drop-in at West Shore Park and Rec, we don't track what municipality they come from. When we run, we have a small program called Chefs on the Shore. We would know what municipality that youth comes from. When I do a survey, like with Dunsmuir Middle School, you'll see 450 respondents. I asked, what municipality they were from when we were asking some of the questions in our survey. So the answer is both yes and no.
Yeah, it might be interesting even just to work with West Shore Parks to, on one of those nights, even just to ask them as they're coming through the door and just have somebody there to kind of just track, just to see where they are coming from. But again, I just think this is really successful program, and I think it's great that you're here. So thank you. Yeah.
Counselor Jensen, I see you, your hand. I'm sorry if I missed you earlier.
It's
Counselor.
been like forever. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
Thank you, and I'll be brief. Lots of good discussion. I'm just reading your front page, and I know this is our first iteration of this, but I'm struggling a bit with gun violence. Can we just refer to increased gang participation awareness or something like that? I think presumably the guns come with the gangs. I think it's a bit strong, is I guess my point, because our gun violence data is actually quite low compared to many other parts of the country. That's just one point. The rest of it I like. Thank you. West Shore Parks and Rec has come up, and I can tell you that this program has been well discussed by the board and is well supported by the board. And I would anticipate that there will be a budget increase proposition coming from the board to everybody's allotment in support of this program in future years. And we are already discussing that. And of course, the board is made up of a constellation of council people from across the region, the West Shore. So I think that it's a healthy move to sort of head in that direction, and likely that's where it should land in the future. But there is a lot of questions to be answered, as in, what does that mean for our staff's participation in that program, or does it actually migrate to be a West Shore Parks program exclusively, or what? So there's lots of future opportunities for discussion down the road. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Counselor Jensen. Counselor Jensen, once a cop, always a cop, right? So I just have a couple of questions. So when you say youth, I just want to be very clear in my own head. What age group is that you're talking of?
The original strategy that was developed and submitted to Public Safety Canada really focused on the middle years, which is 10 to 14. The youth programming that we're running in collaboration with West Shore Park and Rec and other service providers is 10 to 18.
Good, thank you. Thank you for answering that. And you talked about, so I see you have some metrics here, which are kind of neat to see. So are there other metrics, or are you thinking some other metrics? Because you just made mention about if you wanted us to develop other metrics, or are there better metrics that we should be looking at? So I guess that the question really is, you're the expert, and I guess, and I'll go to you, but what does success look like, so that we as a council say, hey, we can get really behind this and say, this was successful. So what does success look like then?
It's a difficult question to answer, because I think when we invest in people, and in particular youth, we're talking something that's long-term, right? And the conversation with Thrive, when they were here a few weeks ago, and Scott Bradford said it was a decade of supporting his youth who was struggling, right, to get them through to the other side. It's an investment that we make that I don't necessarily know and is tangible. And I don't know that we can often say this one particular program resulted in this many reductions in violent crime or in gun and gang violence. It's very difficult to draw those correlations. And so Public Safety Canada has a list of protective factors, but also risk factors. So what I'm trying to do is focus on what is tried and tested and true, and use Public Safety Canada's guide as my sort of manual. What they know works well is mentorship, skill development, connection to school, like sense of belonging. That's difficult to measure, someone's sense of belonging. Access to barrier-free recreation. So I'm using those as my foundational, building blocks to build programs in the community where the service providers, school staff are telling me that there's gaps in services for youth in our community.
Okay, that's great.
So specific metrics, ones that I think are most important, what I'm hearing from folks in the community is kids want to feel a sense of hope. And if they can't afford to take a babysitting course in order to make some money, if they don't have the skills to walk into a restaurant and get a job, how do I help reduce some of those barriers? So that's what I'm focusing on. The access to barrier-free recreation. What we know is we do recreation really well in our community, but we also only have one functional operating rec center, and we have 0 youth centers. So think about most successful programming happens where youth already gather. And I think about where is that in our community besides West Shore Park and Rec,
Yeah.
where they already have up to 140 kids coming on a Friday night. And diversifying the staff and for those programs is something we've also done that feel very, very proud of, bringing some support, because there's a lot of pressure on that building to support youth right now. So space, sense of belonging, skill development, mentorship. Those are the things we're focusing on right now that I've tried to highlight in the metrics.
Okay, super. Thank you very much for that. I know it's tough because I was thinking about that. Oh, geez, how do you do this? Because it's such a long-term investment, you know? The way I look at it is the more kids we can occupy, on those Fridays and Saturday nights, and where your kids are. I just remember growing up in the early 60s, and but they kept us busy, I was a military brat at the time, but that's one thing the military did well. They kept us busy, and showing movies, or we didn't have a swimming pool over at John Stubbs Reform School, as we used to call it back then, when it was a military school. And but it was, but they had all these activities for us all the time, Fridays and Saturdays, and they knew where we were. So I'm really a big fan of this, and believe me, I'm behind this 100%. And I certainly want to see it succeed. I guess where I was coming from, you could see by our discussions here, we're all behind this, except for neophytes when it comes to this now, because it's new. It's really new. And, even our expectations, do you think we're missing anything here? Can you give us some professional advice? Are we missing something here? I'll let you think about it. On that note, I'm going to say we accept the expectations, and we'll move forward. Thank you
Okay,
very much.
thank
It
you.
was great presentation. Thank you. We're nice people. Like I said, we don't bite.
Recognizing that this is a new service area discussion that followed the council expectation consideration, I would like to give Anne an opportunity to provide a bit of an overview of the successes and the challenges within the last year. So in terms of successes, internally, we've built capacity and expertise, use the internal capacity and expertise to support the youth engagement work that we're doing. And examples of that are working with our GIS department. They helped produce some maps so that I could do some engagement throughout Colwood Middle and High Schools. We did a community mapping project. We were also having some early discussions about the feasibility of producing a interactive GIS map that would show where youth and family service providers are in the West Shore. Utilizing Public Works team to help repair equipment, transport equipment, participate in our events. Fire department participating in events. We have, of course, council attending workshops or engagement activities, handing out pizza, swag, popsicles, and opportunities to connect with youth when we can. I think also the increased awareness in the community for this youth engagement work is allowing youth and families to have a better understanding of some of the services that are available, and also how to access them.
in September, I had a parent come up to me in my office and tell me that their son's best friend was being recruited by a gang member, and their child was also being exposed to it, and they didn't know what to do. And so just the connections we've made in the community, we quickly got them in touch with the MISS team, quickly got them in touch with RCMP, with SD62 Safe Schools and Washington Kids Foundation, which works out of SD62. And so a very quick wraparound that happened with someone being vulnerable enough to come up and say, this is what I'm seeing and I don't know what to do. So it's not, no one wants to talk about these things happening in our community, but it is. And it's a bit reassuring to know that actually everybody involved, everyone we reached out to knew what was happening, and people were able to mobilize very quickly and wrap around both those families. So it's work that's happening very quietly in the community. This has also been a year of strengthening relationships, building new partnerships. So you can see 25 new working partnerships. And these are organizations in the West Shore coming to the table with resources and actively participating in building new programs for youth. This includes organizations that support vulnerable newcomers, multiple departments and schools within SD62, including NATSMAT Education and Safe and Healthy Schools, and then of course collaborating with our local service providers as well. We have a total of 13 new programs that have been created or supported or amplified in the last 12 months. Some of them target youth that we know have multiple risk factors who are struggling, and then some of them, like the West Shore drop-in, is more of a protective, reinforcing the protective factors that just sort of hit anybody who would like to be there. And as you see, a total connections in the last year, approximately 8,000 youth that have connected with activities, mentors. We've also enriched 2 programs by reducing financial barriers, both of those at West Shore Park and Rec, pardon me. Something we feel very proud of is the diversification of staff at West Shore Park and Rec. And last fall, we had up to 140 youth coming and lots of issues coming up in the rec center, but also you could see in social media after about some things that were happening in the rec center. And so we have introduced the Washington Kids Foundation mentors. They work in the school system as outreach workers, and they also do before and after school programming. We have them as of June. They were on staff Friday night to connect with youth. And during the summer, it's a scaled down youth night that happens, but they were there for a drop-in basketball, connecting with youth, engaging, and then for that scaled down night. But then as soon as the youth night went back up to its full scale in the middle of September, we have staff there connecting. They're incredible. They're young, they're athletic, they're easy to talk to. And because they work in the school system and now at West Shore Park and Rec, we've closed that gap in communication that we once had, where maybe youth were doing things in the schools and then they were coming on a Friday night, and youth would know what they had been doing during school day or in the community, and the staff weren't aware that maybe these kids should be on our radar and we need to be watching out for them. So having our mentors in both places, we've had 0 incidents in the rec center since introducing them. And it's bound to happen that there will be an incident, but we're ready for it. And so that when youth do make a mistake or make poor choices and there's consequences, we have staff in place now who can mentor them, connect with them, talk about taking responsibility for their actions, and reminding them how we want them to show up in the community. We've offered all free education seminars and workshops. The one we feel most proud of is the half-day community capacity building workshop, where Safer Schools came together. We had 51 different youth serving organizations, 51 attendees with 22 different youth serving organizations represented that afternoon, with incredible feedback that people want to talk more about how we can support youth. How do we talk more openly about the emerging issues that youth are facing in our community, and how do we bring people together more often to collaborate and break down those silos that we work in. And lastly, the presence of youth-specific information on websites, social media, and most recently, that went out in the newsletter, the fall newsletter. It's a little clip on youth engagement as well. So that's all I have with our successes before we move on.
Pretty solid,
Okay,
very solid successes. Thank you.
okay.
Just a quick question. Do you have the youth, do you have a program where I know the green team uses a lot of youth. Is there any connection with what you're doing with the green team right now?
Not,
Okay.
not a direct connection, no.
Cause I noticed there's a lot of younger people that are showing up at those green team events, eh? Oh, I see. Okay. That's where they're coming from.
I'm glad you mentioned that, though. We're looking to, link all of these programs together among our team. Bring volunteers there too. Yes.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So with that, we're back to the proposed increased level of service for the communications and engagement, including youth engagement for the city. And they did hear commentary surrounding consideration of, expanded funding through West Shore Parks and Recreation. And so if that is something that council wishes to give direction on, that would be helpful to receive a resolution in that respect as well.
I think so. And I do it anecdotally because I know when Councillor Grove and I remember when we went down for the swim, I think, and you coordinated that, but I actually asked people, the young kids where they came from, and it wasn't, of all those kids there, very few from Colwood. In fact, I was kind of shocked. A lot of Langford people, mainly Langford actually. So yes, I'll let any other councillors jump in, but I think we should pursue that for direction. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Sorry, is council prepared to make a recommendation with respect to the level of service that's proposed for communications and engagement, including youth?
Yeah, well, I think we're all good with the increase right now, I believe. So, okay, so someone want to make the recommendation then? Okay, thank you, Councillor Day and Councillor Grove. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. You got your direction. Oh, you're really prepared this year. Motion, same two. Okay, same two. Discussion. Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. Unanimous.
Wonderful. Thank you. With that, we'll move along to events, arts, and culture.
Sorry, we were a long time on that. Like I said, it's just so new to us. So thank you. Thank you, Anne, for all your hard work this year.
In addition to the last two topics, the communication team leads event coordination and arts and culture initiatives to support the city's efforts. Two council expectations previously endorsed: high quality marketing, promotions, and branding through campaigns, events, signage, and other placemaking initiatives that reflect the city's vision, raise Colwood's profile, and advance the city's goals. Engaging community events and celebrations that strengthen community connections and raise Colwood's profile as an exceptional seaside community. I'll jump over to Sandra to provide an overview of what's transpired within the last year in this area.
Any changes on the expectations from council? Seeing none, that's good. So we'll proceed. Thanks. Sandra.
I'll be quick. Thank you. So as you can see, we've hosted an increasing number of events over the years. Also an increasing number of community-led events. So the special event permits that we issue. I'll jump into the successes really quickly. So we use our events to really support council's strategic priorities: engagement, well-being, infrastructure, environment, economy, and even governance when we are talking about Indigenous initiatives and that sort of thing. So events including Music in the Park, Eats and Beach, National Indigenous Peoples Day, our Christmas light up, and then things like Bike to Work Week and other events and celebrations. This year we trialed summer music events in new urban public spaces, such as Cobble Corners and Royal Bay Commons. We have a survey going right now to hear from the community what they thought about that, and hopefully in the coming year have a better sense of narrowing down those options and offering them where people would really like to spend time. Completed the second successful implementation of Eats and Beats at the Beachland, which sort of speaks to council's economic goals as well as well-being by showcasing that property, which is a growing community in Colwood. 51 community-driven events. We initiated a public art procurement process for the Galloping Goose Bridge in partnership with representatives from Songhees Nation. That process is ongoing. Not a quick process, but we're in the process of that. Working to expand involvement of community groups, youth events. I'll jump down to some of the challenges and opportunities. As you know, we're working to move large events away from the lagoon area. So we'll be looking to the biodiversity study results to inform that move so that we understand noise levels and human activity and the impact that has on the birds in particular and the environment there. But we will just continue to sort of support events is what this sort of points to. In particular, our priorities for 2025 are to continue to work with the Songhees and Kasapsan Nation to advance the city's goals for making Indigenous culture and history more visible in Colwood. That will include procurement of art like the Galloping Goose Bridge I mentioned. Increasing collaboration with arts and culture groups, in particular Arts and Culture Colwood. We've had some really fruitful meetings recently and look forward to more. And then continue to use events to bridge the engagement initiatives. All the initiatives in the city have the opportunity to use these events, a captive audience, to hear feedback on those, including, for example, emergency preparedness by creating those neighborhood connections. I'll leave it there for questions. Thanks.
On the floor, Councillor Jordison.
I just heard you say emergency preparedness. I was wondering what that looks like.
Thank you for that question. So it's really about when we talk about neighborhood engagement, Angie, our volunteer coordinator, will be looking to find if there are point people in neighborhoods who would like to be a liaison. And it's really about fostering those neighborhood connections so that in the event of emergency, people know each other and they're not, they feel comfortable connecting with each other, checking on each other. They kind of have a practice of being involved to some degree and knowing if someone might be in trouble, checking up on each other.
I just have one question. It's it's worthy of a discussion right now. Right now, Music in the Park is Fridays and Saturday nights through the late spring into early fall. And I just noticed like it's a real pain for myself to try to attend both events because it's a Friday and Saturday night, and so I have to stop and go to these things. But I did notice one thing. I made some observations about it, and I think it's good. And the more, I think it's going to grow with now that we've moved it around. I know the people in the neighborhood over at that park over on Kelly Road there. They people, the awareness is growing and growing, and it's very popular over there right now. Colwood Creek again, popular. I think we're gonna maybe move some down by outside the Arts and Culture Society building. There's gonna be some events that are moved there. But overall, pretty successful. But I have noticed that, and you could tell me, and I can't do this because I don't sit there and count the number of people, but I can tell you Saturday night ones are much higher attended than the ones on the Friday night. I think a lot of people, it's rush, getting home from work and trying to make it to the events, right? That's what I believe. Never asked the question, but I have noticed that the Saturday nights are much better attended, always way more attended. And I guess my question to you is it worth should we just, is it overkill? Like 2 events every weekend? It just seems like it is to me. Like that's what I'm starting to feel now more. And so I really appreciate your comments on that because, maybe we should trial it the one Saturday and make it a bigger event. I don't know. Your comments, please.
Thank you for that observation. Also, thank you for attending as often as you do. It's really nice to see people there from our organization. One of the questions in the survey is what night would you prefer to have it? I am hoping that for 2025, we pick a night informed by the data from the community. And so that is my goal, to centralize it on one night, reduce staff time, reduce your schedule. So yeah, I hope that we will use the data to pick a single night on and it may be a Wednesday night. I doubt it, but that option is open, that we're open to that. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Sandra. Councillor Jordison.
I just wanted to talk about that a little bit more. Not be trying to be a party pooper, but we do have a fiscal accountability here. And I see that, Sandra, I see in the budget that it looks like there's less events planned for this coming year, I think is what I'm seeing. But I'm just wondering, I mean, as much as it's up to the community to give us the information and engage with us and tell us what day is better, or if both are better, it's also our responsibility to ensure that we keep their property taxes down and that people can afford to live here. So I'm just wondering if it's possible just to have events on Saturday nights, and that's it. And I don't actually, I've been looking for it, but I can't remember when we start them and when we end them, but like June, July, August. There's I just counted them out here, and there would be 3 in June, plus which day is that when we do Eats and Beats? Eats and Beats is in June or July?
It's in July. Usually
July.
end of-
Okay,
end
sorry.
of
So
July. Yeah.
4 in June, and then there's 4 Saturdays in July. So one of them would be Eats and Beats. And then August, there's 5. But we also do we also have like a family day event in February, and Easter. There's always we do something there. Halloween, there's something usually with the fire department. Remembrance Day, there's costs involved with that. Usually the Christmas light up, Truth and Reconciliation Day. And then, my thought is we should be looking municipally across with our neighbors to see what we can do on Canada Day. I don't know if that'd be an extra expense, but so like all these events, we're like down to like 20, and I see that we can save a considerable amount of funds. We can still give the community a Saturday something and look at these other events as well. I just think that it's important to look at that.
I think that's what
Yeah.
Sandra had stated, that she's gonna look at with the object of reducing to once a week, I believe.
Yeah, no, I just, yeah,
Okay, no,
thanks.
you're just reinforcing it then. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. That's great. Anyone else? Oh. So Councillor Olson.
I really just hit my microphone when Councillor Jordison said, I don't want to be a party pooper, because I was just getting ready to battle it out. But yeah, I just wanted to reiterate. I mean, I think the fact that you're looking at condensing them down to just Saturdays for the music in the park, I think makes complete sense. I think they're very important events. I think it's an opportunity, especially moving around, to get various pockets of Colwood out, mingling with their neighbors. I think that the community events that we do, the bonfire at the fire hall that I take the kids to, I love all the free hot dogs and juice and stuff. And but I think they're all really important, part of just community engagement. And I think it's important that we maintain service level. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, just to add a couple of highlights with respect to the operating budget. So you did hear the conversation around the number of events. The events core operating budget has been reduced by $25,000. That reduction has been offset by the internal staff allocation that we spoke about earlier. This area does receive some funding through sponsorships. The city's grateful for that funding, and it helps provide a direct reduction in the taxation that would otherwise be required to provide these city events. Please to answer any questions you may have regarding this budget. Overall, we are proposing we maintain the service delivery in this area.
So our contribution to Arts and Culture College Society, is that the same then as we gave them last year? Is that buried in that number?
Yes, that is within the arts and culture budget. Yes, we've maintained that budget of the approximate $20,000 for the annual fee for service arrangement. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Jordison.
I'm going to ask that question. Is there, I was actually hoping for a further decrease. Just because there are limited opportunities to find some extra funds to get this percentage of our tax increase down. And so I'm just wondering, 25%, like, I don't know the exact number of events that we do, but I'm suggesting that we half it. That's just my suggestion.
Comments on that? So, but it's reduced a quarter, you said right now, I believe, is that what stated? Down 20.
There's been a $25,000 reduction in the events operating budget. That has been offset by an internal allocation of the staffing resources towards events.
Okay.
But overall, there has been a $25,000 reduction.
Because for the most part, they're sponsored, right? The bands, we have sponsors for all those, correct?
For the
So-
most part.
Yeah, so it's it's passive cost, so there's no cost associated with that. So it's staff time basically. And garbage pickup, I guess, right? No, they're all sponsored. We get sponsors.
So just to clarify, the city does compensate artists who give their time to perform at events. For the most part, we are able to secure sponsorships from local businesses to cover that cost.
And if we have them, it's going to be even easier, I think, I would believe. Yeah, so that's why I wasn't too upset about that side of it.
I think still there. Staff costs are involved.
Oh, okay, so if you want to, I guess you want to see a breakdown of the cost then? What makes up those costs? I mean, that's okay if you want to see that.
So there are costs associated, for example, advertising events in the newspaper, signage for events, as well as labor costs. So as you say, the parks team will come and bring equipment to the park when we're hosting an event. The communications team, a communications team member is there, so that staffing is included. What else?
To add to Sandra's comment, I mean, we can certainly provide further detail. We can provide detail with respect to the primary activities within the city's events. So Eats and Beats, annual seasonal light up, music in the park. We can easily provide that information. We can also provide information by the type of event or type of cost rather, whether it's labor versus contracted services versus honorariums that are paid to the musicians. As you can see, the event sponsorship provides some funding to this area, but the majority of the funding in this area is property taxation.
Okay, so it's a fair question and that's been asked right now. And I guess, I'd be curious myself now.
Yeah,
So,
that's no problem to provide that detail.
if you could, please. Thank you. Do you need a motion for that then? These special meetings are kind of strange to me too. So do you need a motion or you could just take our instruction on that?
Your instruction is taken.
Thank you. Councillor D.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that this is an area where I have felt we need to do our due diligence and identify where our costs are coming from. And I mean, yes, we may choose to make some reductions or reorganize in some way, but I think we're also looking to understand what our cost drivers are and seek opportunities to find a better way to do that. There may be a more efficient way to do this. There may be some volunteers in our community who want to step up and help with some parts of these things. And that could be a way that's positive and we can, I'm sure staff understand the difference when we have volunteers, we want to invite them to do something fun and good and meaningful. But there's also a role for our paid staff when, you want to be accountable. Sometimes you need a paid staff member to be accountable. So I'm just advocating that we be able to see this clearly so that we have done our due diligence in looking at how we do things and always looking to evolve and do better.
So will we see this during the budget then, when you come back with this, or will you come back with it at the next service review meeting? How do we want to do these, address these questions?
Thank you, Mayor Kobayashi. My recommendation would be any requests that we receive over the course of the next 2 weeks, we will return with that information with our publication for budget
Okay,
deliberations.
that's fair. That's a good one. Thank you. Please continue.
Corinne, did we have a draft recommendation to show for council?
You're making the motion for the entire thing. All right, is good, okay. Make the motion. First, second by Wilson. Discussion, any other further discussion? Seeing none. Any opposed? Seeing,
Like I'm asking for information how
it's gonna come back at the budget.
it's going to be making.
Well, we can make that change at that.
Yeah,
point.
okay.
Okay.
Okay, so with that, we'll move along to the next service area.
Thank you very much.
I'm gonna take a 3-minute recess,
Absolutely.
just a health break for everybody.
Good plans.
I was looking at my friend Councilor Olson. Everyone is back, so we will resume. Over to you, Jen.
Thank you, Mayor Kobayashi. Now over to Human Resources, and I'm joined by our Human Resources Manager, Candace Perkins. The Human Resources Department is responsible for developing and implementing strategies, policies, programs, and practices that ensure effective, empowered, and supported leadership and staff, and that are aligned with collective agreement and legislative requirements, and that support a positive, productive, physically, and psychologically safe workplace culture. Services include recruitment and onboarding, job evaluation and compensation, comprehensive benefits, occupational health and safety, workplace well-being, organizational development, learning and development, employee relations, and labor relations. We have not proposed any changes to the council expectations that were affirmed in last year's service review. Those include alignment of city employment practices with current legislation standards. Our compensation and benefits offered contribute to a positive employee experience. Professional, diligent, inclusive, and equitable hiring practices optimize organizational values, alignment with city employees. Training and professional development is used as a recruitment and retention strategy and a method to empower employees and teams. Employees know the expectation of their jobs and receive regular performance feedback. Employee relations practices contribute to a positive workplace culture. Ongoing support of a culture of occupational health and safety and well-being, and a focus on continuous improvement of our safety management systems. I'll pause for any feedback on your expectations.
Any changes, deletions, additions? Seeing none, we'll let you proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'll turn it over to Candace to provide a highlight of the last year's activities. Thank you.
So the staff position history and forecast, council will notice that there is maintaining staffing for 2025 with an increase of an HR assistant role in 2026 to support the impact of growth and operational complexity. I will speak to that a little further when we come to some of the opportunities and challenges. In the meantime, draw your attention to performance measures and key stats. So this first section provides a snapshot of characteristics of the city's workforce. Moving on to the next section, which highlights some common HR operational activities. So for example, job posting activity is listed, that's as at the end of September for 2024. Currently, we're estimating that we'll probably round out the year with around 25 job postings and competitions. Q4 is a heavily laden quarter with recruitment activity this year. Our turnover rates remain quite low, which I believe helps support council's expectation for a positive workplace culture and compensation and benefits, contributing to a positive employee experience. Our grievance rates similarly are quite low, below any level 2 grievances for 2024 so far. Again, in keeping with council's expectations to be promoting and cultivating positive employee relations practices. Moving into occupational health and safety metrics, we have included some additional ones this year that are new to previous years following some of the recommendations that came out of our core audit. And also in keeping with council's expectations to inform you of our culture of occupational health and safety and continuous improvement of our safety management systems. So the new metrics include, there's a snapshot there included for you on first aid reports. So as generated through our on-site first aid programs. Also our WorkSafe BC premium savings have been expanded to now separate out for you in the years going forward, our savings associated with our regular premiums discounts, as well as beginning next year, the savings associated directly with our core designation. We are expecting that savings related to 2024, they'll be realized in 2025. And we're expecting that amount to be around 37,000. Also added for information, additional information this year and going forward, the number of workdays lost due to current year time loss claims, as well as our most common accident and injury types over the past 5 years, which that information is information that we use to evolve and focus our safety training and education and awareness programs with staff, and improving our policies as well. I'll just pause for a second if there's any questions on this section.
I do have one quick question. The length of employment with the city, it doesn't really reflect our experience level, right? In municipal government, it's a person could have less than 5 years here, but have 20 years experience, right? Am I looking at that properly then?
I think I missed the first part of your question, which
I
metric?
guess my question is, I'm just wondering the stat here, where you have length of employment.
Oh,
And I was trying to understand the value that I'm trying to draw out of that, right? But I guess what a stat that would be interesting to know is what is our experience levels, because to me, that's important.
right. Yes. Sorry. I'm following now. So that length of employment of 5 years or less is employment with Colwood.
Right.
So it is not reflective of experience levels of individuals.
Okay.
That could be based on the systems that we have that to gather that information would be extremely challenging.
Oh, is that right? Because it's interesting because it's scary when you look at the stat as is to show that we've, the number of people with greater than say 10 years experience is a very low number, in total.
So again, this is focusing on employees' employment with Colwood.
Right.
So meaning that, so we have 76 employees out of our 121. So it's just over 60% of employees have been with Colwood for less than 5 years. And then we're showing how many employees we have in their Colwood service, maybe is a better term.
So is that, I guess my question is, maybe I'm getting excited about nothing. So is that bad or is that good? Like to have 60% of your employees less than 5 years experience within the city, to me, doesn't sound like it's the ideal situation.
I believe it's reflective of the trends in workplaces in general.
Okay.
And I believe we're likely going to see shorter tenures of employees, certainly with the way current generations coming into the workplace. There may be fewer of those full career tenured employees that stay with an organization for 35 years as there were in the past. Not that there won't be any, but currently trends are people are moving around, building their careers amongst different employers, over sort of 5 to 10 year periods. Again, not all. That's generally speaking.
Okay.
But there are opportunities certainly for employers, and Colwood included, to ensure that we're continuing to enhance our workplace programs and offerings to retain the investments that we've made in our employees for sure.
Fair enough. Thank you. Councillor Day. And then Councillor Jordison.
Thank you. I wasn't able to find what line you were talking about. That one didn't jump out at me.
It's at the bottom of the table under performance metrics. of the.
Oh, okay, I see, I see. I was like, I was on a different page, that's why. I was curious about the employer injury rate compared to the classification unit under performance measures and key stats continued. Because I didn't know how to understand those numbers. So for this year, it's 7.8 out of 4.1. So I don't know what that means.
So that is for 2023. So that means Colwood's injury rate was 7.8, I believe that's per 100 employees, compared to the trend for our classification unit, which is municipalities and related services, which was 4.1. So for 2023, Colwood's injury rate was sort of above the norm for our classification. We did have in Q4 last year, we had a cluster of injuries, not necessarily related, just coincidental that all occurred, and it was a higher injury rate year. For 2024, I expect we will see a dramatic decrease so far this year to date.
Excellent. And just how representative is the city of Colwood, right? Not every city has a public works department, for example. Are we normal, or are our stats skewed somehow?
I think we probably fall in the average. You're correct that there are some differences between different municipalities and services they offer. Some include rec centers, some might include other jobs that are higher risk jobs than in greater proportion than Colwood's as well. So I think it's a bit of both. I think we fall in the middle as sort of a typical municipality.
Great, thank you. And of course, with our new core certificate, I think we can take some comfort in that as well. I was just trying to understand the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Councillor Jordison.
I was just curious what kind of overtime the city's tracking.
I'm sorry,
What kind of-
overtime?
Yeah.
We do track overtime in terms of in general is your question through
Like how much time off is due to overtime, I guess? Or what is the overtime costing us? Are we paying for it? Is it time in lieu? What does that look like?
So it is tracked, to answer your initial question, certainly through the city's payroll system. And yeah, we are able to report on that if that is, and the various ways that overtime translates into either pay or time off in lieu. I haven't included that in these metrics, but if that's something that council would like in future, we could include that. It is embedded in financial reports.
To add comment, I mean, in terms of the financial implications, they're included within the actual costs within the given service area to which the overtime was incurred. Costs of overtime are accrued when the overtime's accrued, regardless of when the payout occurs or if time is taken in lieu. In terms of reporting out on statistics related to overtime, you know, what the trends are, that sort of thing. It's something that we have access to that information, but it's not readily compiled. The costs are simply captured as a cost of the service delivery within a service area.
I mean, I guess in the general sense, I'd be interested in understanding that. Do we have a policy on time off in lieu? Like, do we have so many days and then that's your maximum, or that sort of thing? And you could come in the afternoon instead of the morning working, and that sort of thing. So you're not taking overtime. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, we have, that's all in place.
Yes, we do have a policy that helps with the administration of overtime and ensuring that we aren't accruing ongoing high liabilities.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Just to follow on that, so it's managed within, it's under the CAO's purview, because the way I read it anyways. So is that the approval of that, is that at the director level? Or who has to approve all that anyways? Is there a single approving authority, or is it director or manager level?
At the operational level, managers are approving when overtime is either scheduled or incurred and booked, if you like, through the payroll system. In 2023, we did, pardon me, 2024, we did update our overtime policy again to just clarify sort of maximum overtime banks that can be carried and not and limiting what can be carried over to a future year, how soon it should be taken. And I think that covers it. Did I miss anything?
I think it's important to highlight as well in terms of when overtime is triggered depends on the contract under which the employee is working.
Right. I don't want to manage, so don't get me wrong. We just want to make sure policies in place. I know there is, because I happened to trip upon it and I was reading it. And but I wasn't aware of, what level, who has to authorize it. So this is just out of curiosity, I was asking that question.
Yeah, direct answer depends on the organizational structure within a given service area, supervisor, manager, and or director.
Yep, as long as I know it's happening, so I don't want to go near it. That's your bailiwick. Counselor Day.
Sorry, I'm trying to phrase this in a way, I don't want to create undue hardship to create a statistic, but I think that it would be beneficial to council to know how much overtime we're generating year over year, so that we could use that to help us understand, do we, whether or not we should be filling that need by hiring more people or additional people, part-time people, any slice and dice it in any which way you like, but just to look at the indication as an organization, are we able to fill our needs with what we have, or do we need to do less or hire more? So just from that overtime, because when we're paying overtime, it's also burning people out, and it's also costing more for the same service. So I just want us to somehow work towards getting an idea of that, so that we can give better direction as a council.
I personally do not want to manage that. I got enough on my plate. Thank you very much. So no, that I will disagree with you on this one. Everything you're saying is good, but that's what we pay them. They're supposed to manage that for us. And we are responsible making sure the appropriate policies or whatever's in place, the safeguards are in place. I personally do not want to manage that myself, and don't know how the rest of you feel. I personally don't. This is dipping into the weeds as far as I'm concerned, but that's my personal opinion. Councillor Jordison.
I might have to disagree with you, Mayor.
It's fine.
I just, I think it's important, like Councillor Day mentioned, that we, like, how often people are off because of overtime or vacation depends how much they're here to do the work too, and how much burnout is happening and that sort of thing. I think it's important to know what the overtime, what's incurring the overtime, and like, are we looking at lots here or a little? I think it is important. And you say that the policies are there, as long as the policy's in place, it'd be nice to know what the policy was. Well,
Well,
I don't know what the
you
policy
can
is.
look it up, but I'm just going to tell you right now that in my total experience sitting on boards and boards of director, this is an operational issue. And if we start managing and dabbling into all these things, that's why we pay them. They're expected to manage this.
I'm not asking to manage.
So I'm
asking
not
for the
I'm not
information.
arguing that it's not important, because it is important. But the operations side of this, the staff side of this should be managing this themselves. And, I'm gonna, someone can put a motion forward on this. I'll just tell you, I'm gonna vote against it. It's just totally operational to me.
To add commentary, one of the benefits of this annual review, when you hear from city service delivery teams, you have heard from us in the past where we do highlight if there have been either instances, service delivery expectations that have driven overtime or staffing turnover that's driven overtime. Sometimes those comments are made. Sometimes those comments are made with respect to why we are proposing increased resources to maintain existing service delivery. So certainly that understanding is with, your service delivery leaders, and we will integrate that commentary as we see it relevant towards the financial implications of service delivery.
So I'll open it on the floor to anyone that wants to make the motion. Please don't let me sway you. I'm just telling you, I just get kind of leery about starting to dip into areas like, we do have a fiduciary responsibility, making sure that you're asking all the right questions. Absolutely. I'm saying that I totally agree with you. And it's for us to make sure that, proper appropriate policies are in place. That's where I see the distinction between the two. And as you just said, Jen, I mean, you're managing this right now. And frankly, I just don't, I don't want to manage this myself personally. So anyways, but I'm opening the floor to anyone that wants to make the motion. Okay, seeing none, we'll move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will move on to the section on successes that within the HR or supported by the HR service area. So as council is aware, we've just referenced in 2024, we participated in a core or certificate of recognition audit, which was one of our HR service area top priorities for 2024 to assess from an external perspective the quality of what we felt we had was a robust OH&S program and get that external perspective. And we were delighted to successfully achieve certification on our first attempt. And I would say, again, this is recognition for council's direction and expectations around a culture of health and safety and continuous improvement in that area. Also, the HR service area supported the collective bargaining process in partnership with the GVLRA, as well as the implementation of our first collective agreement with IAFF and Local 5420. We also coordinated the process of the city's departure from the GVLRA for council's decision and direction in late 2023. We anticipate completing our compensation review refresh of regional comparator market pay rates by the end of 2024 to ensure we remain aligned with council's compensation philosophy. We initiated a benefits program review and assessment, which is currently in progress, and it may be completed actually before year's end, but if not, is on track for completion in Q1 of 2025. This compensation review and benefits review were both 2024 HR priorities aligned with council's expectations for ensuring Colwood's compensation and benefits contribute to a positive employee experience. We supported and are continuing to support HR aspects of the new Colwood Medical Clinic, which is early in its initiative and ongoing. Also arranged for several staff to complete the mental health first aid program delivered by the Canadian Mental Health Association. Developed and implemented the new exempt pay administration policy in alignment again with Council's compensation philosophy that was approved in 2023, as well as ensuring alignment with the BC Pay Transparency Act. Also updated several administrative policies, such as overtime we've just discussed, sick leave, vacation, and regular review and annual updates to several of our occupational health and safety policies, including those which align to Bill 41, excuse me, of the Workers' Compensation Act that came into effect on January 1st of 2024. That enabled us to strengthen the program we already had in place at the city to support ill or injured workers to stay safely engaged in the workplace and meaningful work rather than having to be completely off work. Any questions? Sorry, as we just pause here. No. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. I just wanted to understand better the first bullet under challenges and opportunities, which was related to operational pressures, including the unanticipated nature of HR work. So I just don't understand it. So it's simply I need to be illuminated.
I'm just coming to that right now. So thank you for that question. Operational pressures, of the day-to-day, perhaps similar or not dissimilar to other departments, right? It's ongoing, what I refer to sometimes as the life happens factor. And, the HR team works proactively wherever we can to support managers and employees in navigating challenges that they encounter in the world of work, and so that they feel equipped to address things as they come up. But we're also committed to providing responsive service and support suitable to the circumstances when necessary. So that means frequent reprioritization, and sometimes some of those overall strategic or supporting strategic initiatives take a back seat to that. At the center of HR work is people, and people want to feel cared about, listened to, not less important to the work itself, and be supported so that they can be their best selves at work. Yes, it's a challenge, and it's I don't mean this disrespectfully, but it is time consuming to invest that care and that time in people. I believe it speaks to our low grievance rates, our low turnover rate, and as well as our workforce engagement in safety and well-being and a general workplace community and culture of care. So as our organization grows and evolves, and I look at Colwood, we're making the transition right now from a small organization to a mid-sized organization. And our HR team is stretched now with increasing complexity. We have 2 unions now, so that increases some complexity, shifting to in-house labor relations. Ensuring that we're maintaining our core designation. We worked hard to achieve that. We want to maintain that going forward. And so it becomes increasingly difficult to focus on, as I mentioned at the start, those more strategic, proactive programs that might even help to prevent some of the issues and challenges that come up along the way. So this and the challenge noted in the second bullet, which is, that many of the aspects of HR at Colwood remain largely reliant on manual work. So to Mayor Kobayashi's question or comment earlier about, what is not necessarily the service to Colwood experience of our employees, but what are our employees' experience that they're bringing to Colwood. we don't have an HRIS system to capture that kind of information and be able to pull that kind of data and do that sort of analysis. And so as we're sort of in that transition to a mid-size employer, some of our manual processes and ways of storing information or tracking information is becoming burdensome. And so we are at a point where we do need to, really give some consideration to some technical solutions appropriate in scope to our HR program and our size of our organization, but to help us manage some of our processes and records. So with that, these challenges in particular, lead us to where I started off at the beginning of this presentation, acknowledging that there's a request for an additional resource in 2026 that to support us through much of the day-to-day operational work and processes. And although it's categorized as an increase, arguably I kind of see it as a bit of a 50-50 maintaining and increasing, just because of with the growth, we do need that additional capacity to maintain the current service levels and give that people-centric focus. So given some of the changes and increased complexity that I've referenced, and ensuring that we're staying on top of and continuing to evolve our programs. The HR assistant role would also relieve our HR coordinator and OHS advisor of some of those day-to-day operational aspects, allow them to focus on that mid-professional level service that they are and continue to develop themselves, that is intended to be the primary focus of their roles, as well as with the manager role then freeing up some capacity to that advancing our progressive employer programs that we strive to continue with. Other challenges noted there and opportunities, because where there are challenges, there are opportunities. So continuing to offer ongoing and timely organizational and leadership development programs to ensure that we're meeting council's expectations for training and professional development that empowers employees and teams, and also evolving our workplace community and positive workplace culture. Additionally, organizational succession planning. So this, I see this really integrated with that leadership development and organizational development to ensure that we're making that long-term investment in Colwood, and to the point where there are opportunities to retain individuals beyond 5, 10, that career progression. Colwood wins in that situation. Turning again back to the HR service area or the HR team directly, the HR assistant role also is an additional benefit would be supporting succession planning within HR as well, having those levels to progress through. Any questions? Okay. So 2024 priorities, as noted, we anticipate completion or continuation of most of these, with the exception of a couple noted there that are deferred to 2025. And in 2025, a top priority will be now developing Colwood's bargaining approach, as we are now on moving forward independently of the GVLRA And so our QP collective agreement expires December 31st of this year, 2024. So 2025 will be a bargaining year with QP. And so with that, also establishing our employer bargaining mandate. Just the last quick point, 2025 is our next scheduled employee satisfaction survey as well. So that will be completed last completed in 2021. So we do that every 3 years.
And so with that, just to highlight a couple of the financial implications of this area, in order to maintain the certificate of recognition, we are required to undergo an audit every 3 years. And so we have set aside funding to support the next audit, which is scheduled for 2027. Last year, we did raise, with respect to the GVLRA participation and ceasing that participation, we have transferred that funding over to this service area to support union bargaining processes moving forward. In addition, we are proposing an increased level of service in 2026, and the financial implications associated with that function have been included in the draft 2026 operating budget. Pleased to answer any questions you may have with respect to the HR operating budget. And we are proposing an increased level of service in this
Just
area.
one question. Where are the WCB premiums paid out of? HR or is it administration?
Premium costs are associated with employees
Yes.
throughout the service
Yeah.
areas.
Is it in the HR budget or is it in the administration budget?
Those premium costs are throughout within all labor benefit budgets.
Oh, I see what you
Yeah.
do. Yeah, you put it into the respective departments.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry about that. No questions on that, so recommendations? Mover and seconder, please. Okay, thank you, Councilor Grove and Councilor Olson, sorry. Discussion, seeing none, any opposed? Unanimous, thank you very much, we'll move on. Sorry about that.
Thank you. We'll now be moving on to the area of information technology. I'm joined by Mark Downton, our IT manager. The IT department leverages technology and data to best serve programs, services, and the governance of the community. IT works to ensure the city uses the data it creates to understand its operations and performance levels. The team oversees a broad spectrum of technology services, including planning and deployment of hardware. Additionally, we offer support, training, troubleshooting, as well as guidance during the implementation of new systems or system upgrades. We have not proposed any changes to the council expectations. Those are as follows. The city makes beneficial use of technology to enhance our services. Data and systems are safe, secure, and backed up. The city uses information technology to improve public access to our data. Integrated and complete digital systems that meet or exceed legislative requirements, and protection of personal information is essential. I'll pause should council have any feedback with expectations.
Not seeing any, so we'll move on. Thank you.
And with that, I'll turn it over to Mark to highlight the successes and challenges and opportunities within this area.
Thank you, Jen. I just wanted to note that I've worked for the city of Colwood for 4 years, just a little under 5, but this is my 25th year in IT. 16 years in local
To
government.
my point.
I had a few performance measures and I always struggle with this, but one thing I wanted to raise is we did inventory and we currently support 80 applications. About a third of those are sort of enterprise or infrastructure that's below the surface. And then, the other 2/3 is up top where the users are working. So most people think about IT with your interaction with Outlook or iCompass. But there's this whole hidden layer that we spend so much time in. Talking about successes from the last year. One of our goals in 2024 was to start moving our server infrastructure to the cloud. So we did that in Q2 of this year. And we're going to slowly transition our workloads over the next couple of years to the point where we ideally don't have any hardware on premise any longer. We've expanded the Colwood network. Recent additions are the Azure instance in Ontario, which is where our servers are running, and also the medical clinic. And then speaking of the medical clinic, we fired up a whole new Microsoft tenant for that. So that's a separate instance. We wanted it to be segregated from municipal data since we have health data in that. So, and then we'll be working with the clinic to fire up their software that they'll be using for patient data. We started secure printing last year where people walk up to the printer with a fob, and that's saved a tremendous amount of abandoned print jobs. So in the last, from September to September, there were over 14,000 print jobs that were sort of saved by having that system in place. 120 kilograms of CO2 saved. We're really expanding digital workflows. So anywhere the public would come to do a form on our website, we're using Adobe now, or not Adobe, DocuSign. Yeah. So, you know, in the past where someone had to print something off and sign it and bring it in person, they can do it all online now. So we continue to digitize those workflows. And Tempest, or the municipal business system, it continues to get more modules turned on. So business licensing will be coming on next year. Under challenges and opportunities, I have AI first, and it's not it's both. It's a huge opportunity. So we're piloting the use of Copilot with some users in the office. And what Copilot will do when you have the full version is it will look at our internal data. So an example is you could consume a 100-page report and give you a one-page synopsis. It can compare two bylaws and give you the differences line by line. So it's supposed to be equivalent to having your own assistant. So one of our planners, Matt, he's saying, "Don't take it away from me." He's 3 times as more productive since he's had Copilot. So we'll see a rollout of AI, and AI will just complement the work that we do. And when you're in a bureaucratic setting, it'll just be this huge time saver. But first, we need to get some things in order. So document management system is one of them, and we have RFP that closed, and we'll be coming to you in a couple of weeks for approval on awarding that. So that'll be moving our documents into SharePoint and using Purview. And once that knowledge base is inside that container, then we can really take advantage of AI. Asset management project is moving along, and Brian will talk to that next in the GIS section. Where and financial software, Jenn will be talking and Kathy will be talking about this shortly, but the product that we use is end of life. There's an official end date for it now. So we've started a discovery process. We hope to get an RFP out next year around that. It'll be an enormous project, and I can't understate the amount of staff effort and financial costs that that'll bring. So we're trying to understand the edges of that. Our network and server infrastructure security is what keeps me up at night. There's no shortage of reading events. In the last year, you can think of London drugs, you can think of the province, you can think of so many different instances. So just staying on top of that and trying to protect ourselves so we're not on the front page of the paper. So to that end, we added managed response last year, which is a service where 24/7 someone's looking at our AV, our antivirus, and if there's an incident, they'll respond on our behalf. So it's sort of hiring hiring a third party to be your network operations, because we're only here Monday to Friday business hours, and that's not when attacks happen. And then another big challenge really is in the past, you used to buy software and it was a known quantity. It was a capital cost, and everything's moved to cloud and a rental. And with inflation, we're seeing, I'll give you some examples. My Adobe renewal this year was 36% higher than I anticipated. VMware that runs our server infrastructure was 151% higher. So we're seeing these enormous hikes in the software budget, and it's largely out of our control. And that's the biggest line in my budget. So every organization is seeing this. It's just something that we need to be aware of, and it's also a shift about how we fund it, since it's not a capital purchase any longer. It's operating costs, so it's driving up my operating budget.
Just a quick question for you, Mark, to give you a little rest here. So this hacking and this, this whole thing on, just reading about some of the terrible things that are happening to well-known establishments, people hacking in. And so is that a metric that we should be watching, so that, when you come shouting to us and saying, we need more money to do this, and is there a metric that we can see if it's how big of a problem it is right now? Because I see some firms, I saw how they sort of say they see that they can track how many times people have tried to hack them. I don't know if that's extra money and extra software, or if it's something that you can just get from what our antivirus software right now.
Yeah, and in terms of just brute force attacks, that happens thousands, if not millions of times every day. Just they're automated bots, so those numbers are almost meaningless. I'll say in terms of attacks, they're largely unreported. Once you start talking to other colleagues in this space, it's like, oh, we were infected, we had an incident. People don't want to publicize that, but I think it's much wider than you would realize. The best thing we can have is, I believe we are in a place right now where we can respond quickly, and hopefully, if it does happen, that you minimize the amount of damage. But your worst fear is a ransomware attack, where in ransomware it used to be a challenge where people didn't have backups, and they were challenged to restore their environment. But now they're trying to embarrass you, find some data in your system that they're going to post on the internet, and that's what you're paying the ransom for, is to keep that quiet. So
Right.
so it's a challenge, and you protect yourself by just doing multiple layers. It's no different than home security, right? So
Okay, thank you very much.
So in 2024, our priorities were around the asset management system. And once again, Brian will talk to that. And records management, we went through quite a bit of consultation last year, and we issued an RFP in the fall. And like I said, we'll be coming back in a couple of weeks to hopefully get an approval for that to move forward. And the finance software, we knew that this is looming. So work has begun to start understanding a solution there. The municipal business system, or also known as Tempest, there's still some outstanding work to do there. And that's really just driven by internal capacity with the other departments that we're working with. And then also I wanted to address our network and server infrastructure. And so that was done with the Azure build in the spring. So in 2025, our priorities, top three are document management, and this is moving our files into a cloud-based system. And this was really driven in COVID. Once the office was shut down and people were working remotely, we just came to understand the current tools that we had didn't work. And I think people got really used to working in a mobile environment. It's the way that the world's moving forward to. So we'll be moving our files into SharePoint. And then at that point, we'll be able to take advantage of a lot more automation and AI. We want to complete the outstanding issue Tempest web services that are still ready to go. and complete the scoping of the finance system. And we'll slowly be moving workloads over to the cloud servers that are running here on premise over the next 2 years, probably with a date of 2026 to retire on premise hardware. And then the last thing that we need to do too is penetration testing, which is a requirement of our cyber insurance. So we typically do that about every 3 years, and you hire someone to hack you and understand your weaknesses, and then fix those holes before someone else finds them. So if we could go back to the first page, I had made a note about a business analyst or a operations analyst, and it's kind of a spoiler alert because you'll see this in the finance presentation too. But I think the biggest limitation that we have in our IT department right now is our current setup provides the tech, but we struggle with providing the business logic in a big application install. So Tempest was a good example when we're trying to install that, just trying to extract from the users, what are our business processes? How does a permit flow through this department? What happens when it kicks over to finance? You know, all these dominoes that fall. And so that's what a business analyst does, is really be able to draw that out, and before you get into your project, have a complete understanding about the business logic of the environment. And then as staff lead during the project, you're not so vulnerable because you understand your process at that point, and you're improving your process at that point. So I think with on the horizon, we're seeing these big finance projects coming. We're in a couple right now. Tempest certainly was onerous on the finance department, as is the asset management project. And then, you know, we're looking at a replacement of their current financial system. And to Candace's point, hopefully adding some HR capability there as well. So these are enormous undertakings, and that's where you need this expertise of someone that can really understand how does information flow between these systems that are not necessarily linked. So when you know, one ends and you're trying to get into the next system, how is that going to happen? And yeah, that position would be paramount to be successful in doing these projects. So you'll hear more from finance on that, but that's the missing piece for IT right now. With that, I'll welcome any questions.
Seeing none, we'll move on. Jenn.
Thank you. I mean, as Mark has directly stated, the cost escalations related to licensing, we're not immune to those. So we have done our best to integrate those into our current budgets. But what I absolutely want to highlight, until we start to progress through the procurement of some of these major initiatives, including budget software, the finance software, as well as the transition that we're proposing to SharePoint Purview, we don't have great clarity on what our future costs will be to support, in particular, the city's core financial system, our ERP system. The last time we did that transition was 15 years ago. And so I want to highlight that tonight because, you know, we have increased our future budgets in 26 and 27, but we will have much greater clarity as we progress through and get a better sense of, you know, what the annual costs will be. In addition, which we'll comment on more as we get into capital budget considerations, will be our transition as to how we're financing for these initiatives. As Mark said, you know, we're moving away from where it's a significant capital investment upfront, and it's an ongoing sort of rental consideration, if you will. So considerations as to how we are setting aside sustainable funding to support our IT service delivery into the future will need to be made. Beyond that, pleased to answer any questions. To be clear, we believe that our existing budget is sufficient to support our SharePoint Purview transition. the budget that we believe will be required to support new budget software and the budget to support the new finance software that's coming inside of the next few years is yet to be known.
Counselor Day.
I may be just searching for my rose-colored glasses, but I was kind of hoping that one of the outcomes of all this change in software might be that a lot of the very manual processes that we're trying to get away with, like we talked about in HR, might be able to go the way of the dodo at the same time. As we are kind of forced into this position of having to refresh our software. I hope that we will be keeping an eye on trying to get rid of our manual systems. Not that we won't ever have to recreate them, because things happen and sometimes you gotta pinch hit, but the ultimate goal, of course, is to try to get away from so many manual systems.
Absolutely, through the chair. I appreciate that comment. I mean, you will certainly be hearing from finance tonight with respect to where improvements have been made and where they have not been made, and how we're trying to fix that gap, as well as from other teams that are benefiting from some of the recent software changes. But yes, certainly there have been improvements immensely to move away from some manual processes.
Thanks.
And so with that, overall, we are proposing to maintain existing service delivery within IT with recognition that we do expect future cost pressures in this area to continue.
Motion, please. Rovan Georgeson, thank you very much. Discussion, seeing none. Any opposed? Seeing none, thank you very much. We move on. Thank you very much, Mark. Good job. Oh. Counselor Day, sorry.
My fault. I was looking for the spot because in the appendix, it does show an increase in the property taxation, but we're saying that we're maintaining this service. So I just wanted to be completely clear that in order to maintain our IT service, it's going to cost more money. And I just want to make sure that's very, very clear. Anyone who's watching our meeting.
Correct. And that cost escalation will continue into the future.
The GIS.
We'll move over to GIS, and I'm joined by our GIS manager, Brian Goebel. GIS team is responsible for maintaining the city's land information databases and mapping systems. Geographic Information System is a software system that combines mapping with land record databases, asset management databases, and analytical tools. Number of council expectations, we have not proposed any changes. They include GIS be optimized to meet the needs of the city, be used to support asset management practices, GIS be used to support land information management practices, GIS be used to improve the efficiency of information retrieval, both internally and externally, GIS be used to support an open data approach.
Any questions? Counselor Day.
Thank you. I think I ask this every year, but forgive me. It's often a mystery to me because the CRD has GIS and we have GIS. Why do we both need GIS?
The CRD's data is a regional system. They don't manage addressing. They're reliant upon our data that we are recording. We assign addresses, we do the roads, we do the zoning, all that information here in-house. they consume it from us, actually. So what happens every week, we're a member of a group called the Integrated Cadastral Information Society. Every week, we publish to them, it's a provincial agency, nonprofit. We publish to them our addresses, our property information, our zoning, we put our infrastructure, sanitary lines, stormwater mains. It goes to them. That group there compiles it provincially and then gives that out to CRD, Machosen, Langford, all those groups that need that data as well. On top of that, this information is also funneled into the provincial systems. So our addresses are going from us into the Address BC database, as well as we get back, as part of the agreement, data from land titles. So we get their most recent copy of the parcel fabric for the province that gives us all the information we need regarding subdivisions, that we also get in a secondary notices whenever subdivisions are completed, we get that. So all this information, we're compiling it here on a daily basis, actually. Our addresses with Tempest, we're getting referrals from building, from development services, from engineering. It all is managed internally. Decisions are made by the fire department on lane access, addressing, street names, as well as within the buildings, the layout of the addresses within the building. And the CRD wouldn't have the capacity nor the knowledge to know what's going on the property down the road in this new development. They don't have the staffing on the ground like we do. So we have a very direct connection to what's going on within the city boundaries.
Great, thank you.
Let's move forward.
With that, I'll turn it over to Brian. Thank you.
Okay. And actually, that was a great segue for me, because that leads into how our group of two people is so involved with all the departments here. On a daily basis, we're talking with the building inspectors, the engineers, the financial people, development services, the planners and everything like that, both in supporting them with maps as well as doing analysis for them. Quite often there's sort of explorations in some of the policies that they're wanting to do. And we've done that with development services this year with exploring the differences in notification buffers and everything like that. On the next page, I wanted to make sure that I put in just a little bit of a screenshot of when I talk about our Tempest land record system. That's the top one there. So a little box that you see that has the text in it, that is this property as an example. And it records there the assessment for the property, the addresses. Are there any development applications from, say, planning, engineering? Do we have any calls for service that have occurred on that property, say through bylaw infractions, as well as all the taxation information? With that, we can then also see it directly on the map. So in Tempest, we could say, show me all properties that are currently zoned as a CD1, say for example, and we can find them all, where they're located, as well as all the mail out notifications, say that development services might have to provide for notification. And then the lower half of the screen, this is our new asset management system, a variety of screenshots. The big center one there with the map on it, that is our GIS software. There's a component that goes in there. So we are doing the digitizing of the new pipes, the roadways, street lights, street signs, all those assets. Each asset, right down to the individual signpost and the individual inspection chamber on a property, has information like how much did it cost? What's its expected life? What's its current condition? When is it likely going to need to be replaced? And all that information is going to come from not only from the developer when they give it to us, from the engineering people when they look at it, from public works when they're out there inspecting it and doing say cleaning of the storm drains. They do inspections there. So all that information, they can be putting that into this system to help us decide where are our priorities across the municipality. And part of that is the little window there is an actual screenshot of the mobile app that goes with it. So the public works can actually take that with them. And it also involves being able to do a work request. So we may get a call, there's some flooding happening on one of the streets. Dispatch can put a pin on the map, give it to a public works staff member who would go to that site and then could start recording information on site, including taking pictures, as well as identifying what assets are the problem. So where we're at with that, those two big pieces of software, it's actually, I consider a pretty good success. The asset management system is very big. Bigger, I think, than in terms of effort than I was anticipating. So there are some things that we are struggling with, but we are progressing quite nicely. We have in the system right now our asset inventory, so engineering and public works can access that. This includes, at the moment, we're at what we call asset classes. There's 22 of them so far, which has actually now grown, I think, today with another 2 that I just received some information. So when I say asset class, we're talking the sanitary network, the stormwater network, roads, bridges, sidewalks, the trails, bike lanes, parks, street lights, street signals, fire hydrants, which aren't ours, but the fire department needs to keep a track of and keep an eye on those. So we're putting those into the system too. Because there's both the ones installed by CRD water services, but there's also those on private properties, on the developments there, and they want to know about those. Keeping with the fire department theme, we've had a lot of workshops, emergency operations center workshops that the fire department has been putting together. And our group has been providing the maps for that. And it is amazing to see how dynamic the whole situation can be and how rapidly it can change. So there's been a couple of times there in the mapping where there'll be a request for something and it's like a big scurry back to the mapping and the plottering, come back out. Here you go. Is this what you're looking for? So there's quite a dynamic. It gives me a really good appreciation for how much effort, time, and planning goes into emergency services. And that's one of the areas that I would really like to continue to strengthen. And we are kind of obligated to, because I don't know if you've heard of Next Generation 911. It's the 911 system that we've all been accustomed to is primarily been tied to your landline. Well, there's a lot more cell phones out there now. And so this new system, the CRTC has basically told everybody you're going this way. And it involves being able for the provider, the 911 responder, or sorry, dispatch center, to use your cell phone to help them locate you and get information from you. And there's a whole variety of digital methods that they can communicate with you. But driving the data in behind that, they would like all the municipalities to be providing their address data on a regular basis. It'll go into a general area and be sent off to each provincial central repository, I guess you could call it, so that it runs in the systems there. So our obligation here is to update our addressing database to the group, sorry, it's an organization, National Emergency Number Association, and they have a database structure that they want us to follow. And it involves not only your address, but perhaps which floor are you on if you're in a so it's a very interesting development, and we've been building up our database towards that. So that you'll see in some of the stats there where I have the address points. Back in 2022, we were at 6,000. 23, we're at 6,700. And now in 2024, and that's year to date as of September, we're now at 9,000 individual address points. And that's recording not only the civic address, but the unit address inside of these buildings. And there could be upwards of 20 to 30 units within a building or more, depending on how big and complex the system is. More away from the emergency services, just the general operations for engineering and for development services. We also are helping them with their maps for the service reviews, tracking where is the new infrastructure going in. And in the case of engineering, they are tracking where work agreements are going into place in the developments. And we put together for them a web map that has the editing that staff themselves can actually record where all these agreements are and then track information within that. And the side benefit of that is that it has helped us understand where new developments, where new assets are coming, and we can start anticipating the work that's going to be needed in there, as well as getting the data into the system in the asset management system. Last year, we did the aerial photography. It was flown in 2023, and through the winter, we received a lot of the data. It included a better quality of contours. Those were put on the maps on the public site in February. But that little screen picture at the bottom there is actually a compilation of the LiDAR data on the aerial photography, as well as some 3D buildings. This was the first step, knowing that we are looking towards a building design here on this property. And so this is sort of the initial concept. When we get some designs, we could actually place it on this picture and rotate in and zoom in to get a better feel for what's its look and feel going to be like when we get to trying to conceptualize it. That's very much an exploratory at the moment. I'll switch over now to the challenges. So the asset management system has been a success in that we have all this data now in a central repository, but it's very complex and there's a lot of data validation going on. Financial data is a big part of it, and you've had many conversations with me about that, and I am working towards getting that done. It is a big challenge, and so yes, that is going to be one of the challenges that we will continue to work on through the rest of the quarter, and it's probably going to be extending a bit into January. But alongside of that, we have engineering staff and public works staff able to help and collaborate with me to make sure costs and everything for replacement of assets and everything is on par, and we can review that each year through information we receive from the developers when they tell us how many assets they put in and what the costs are from the market and everything like that. Again, the challenge that we're facing with 911 will be the addressing. So again, there's more coming on that. That is a developing scenario. At this moment, it is sounding like they are getting closer to knowing which agency, and we believe it's regional districts, will be collecting the data from the municipalities, which will then be given to the primary collector. In this case, it's TELUS, who's collecting all that information for BC and for Alberta. And so we will be having to collaborate with CRD and the other municipalities to make sure that our data matches along the edges of the boundaries, like roads, so that our road and their road are definitely connected for dispatch purposes, as well as that our addressing is up to date. We'll continue to try and get more information on the public web maps. One of the things that we are dealing with is new versions of software come out. We've finished a training session for my coworker. She finished a training session on the software. So she'll be able to use the new software to start designing some new interfaces. Not only right now, we just have the one public map. We haven't changed the look and feel of that. What we're going to be doing is moving towards a better design, as well as there are other themes that many departments have been asking for communications, youth outreach it was mentioned there, how it'd be nice to have a map online for people to access that shows them where can they find some facilities that they might need. And this could also be expanded to other things. Where are, say, for just even walkability, where's the transit stops? Where's the grocery stores? Are there what's the easiest way to get from A to B to C? And we can take a look at building up some of that. I keep talking about where we're going with all this. And so one of the major items that I need to be working on is strategizing these next 5 years. We have this software. We have lots of new tools coming, lots of new demands coming. And so I'll be working on trying to strategize that. So I'll be, again, collaborating with all the departments as well as any other groups, council, ideas that you would like to see on the public maps and the directions we'd like to go with mapping as well as the information. And then I believe this might answer Councillor Day's earlier question about where can we find some efficiencies. One of the things that I'm really happy to see throughout the agency is walking along the hallways and seeing the maps up on the screens. That's great to see. It means the work is being used. But what I'd really like to be able to do is get people better trained in using the software without hiring outside staff to do it. So I've been talking with folks and asking them, would they be interested in doing internal workshops where we do once a month? We pick a topic in the land record system or the asset management system and work through a scenario. How do I do this? How do I do this? How do I find that? How do I get this? And so I was thinking that would be a great way not only to improve people's knowledge, but get them practiced at using the software. And that was hopefully one of the things that will help everybody get the work done more efficiently in all the departments. I guess we want, yes, 25 priorities. So still at the top of the list, asset management system, maintain the data, improve the integrity of the data, just continue to enhance the information. That whole priority there will become very much an ongoing maintenance process through all the departments, both for the two of us in GIS as well as involving Public Works and Engineering for the inventory and condition inspections of all the assets. NG 911, we have to do it. And the timeline is getting closer and closer to where they want us to have the data delivered. 5-year strategic plan, I'd like to keep that as a priority. And then the other ones are there and we will work on them as we can. Upgrading the public web maps, getting new data on there, getting new themes, multiple maps set up for people both that would work on a browser desktop as well as a mobile. And then of course, work to try and enhance the city's skills with our software, both Tempest Land, with the asset management system and just mapping in general. There is one priority that isn't on here that is on the strategic plan. And that is, I've seen it's been termed the 15-minute walkability analysis. I've seen the description there. It's been, GIS has been, I guess, given part of that. It will be a regional project. There's a consultant working on that. So I'll be doing a lot of collaboration with our planning crew as well as the other municipalities and the consultant. So when we start getting results back from that, we're expecting to see a lot of map indices and layers, and we'll work to get that onto all the systems that we want to have on. So that could be another priority that gets added on there. It wasn't put into this document.
Questions? Being none. Budget.
There really are no financial implications that I wish to highlight for this service area. Unlike cost pressures that IT is experiencing, we do believe that we have captured the accurate costing in this area. Univeris is the new software tool that we're referring to for asset management, and the ongoing maintenance costs for that tool are within this operating budget. Pleased to answer any questions you may have. We are proposing to maintain service delivery within the area of GIS.
Counselor Day?
Thank you. Just pointing out that although if we are maintaining this service, there is an increase in costs of $54,000 or 0.24%. So again, just pointing out that sometimes just to keep what we've got still costs more money.
Hey, Counselor Jarvis, seconder, Counselor Olson. Discussion? Seeing none. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you very much. Jen, you got 24 minutes only.
We're through 6 service areas. Tomorrow evening, we have 5 service areas scheduled. So I offer it up. We can present the last service area, which is finance, or we can reschedule it to tomorrow evening to start at 6:30.
Getting kind of late, isn't it? Look at finance. What does everyone think? Motion to adjourn? Okay, motion to adjourn then. Thank you very much, Counselor Jordison, Counselor Day. Any opposed? No, we'll do it tomorrow. I have the same thing, the same service review tomorrow, all tomorrow afternoon for 5 hours with the CRD. Over 3,000 pages. We start the process. Yeah. I tell you, I'm not